Thank you, Shane. Can everyone hear me well and see my screen?
Yes, indeed. Good to go.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fintech Factor presentation of RiskSystem. My name is Felix Queitzsch. I am the Chief Risk Officer at RiskSystem, and I will give you some insight today into what we do and what services we provide. As our name suggests, we are in the risk management industry, in particular in the fund risk management industry. So we are serving ManCos, super ManCos, AFIM, and also individual fund managers of any type. In order to talk a little bit about risk management, so what is the type, or what is it about risk management that nowadays managers are concerned? Of course, there are the four obvious ones, which is market risk, liquidity risk, credit risk, and counterparty risk. But there is a little bit more to it. Number one, risk compliance. So the authorities have different rule sets for different funds, which a fund needs to comply with. We have the regulatory reporting, which is basically implied by the first one. So we check the analytics, we check the risk compliance, and we take everything, we put it in specific formats, and we send it straight to the regulators. Then there's a kind of a new concept, which is called ManCo tech. So basically nowadays we have ManCos, they basically manage, or not manage, but provides different services to a lot of funds. And they are faced with a whole new set of problems. And the last one, which is kind of the new kid on the block, which is the ESG oversight. So ESG oversight looks at your fund not necessarily from a value perspective, but much rather from an ethical value perspective. So we can look at different things, from carbon footprint to any strange involvements in weird businesses whatsoever. Just based on the previous slide, we can kind of conclude that risk management nowadays is quite a challenge. So what does it take for a manager to actually do the risk management in a proper way, especially if it's a ManCo? First of all, we need good people. We need people with finance skills and IT skills, because it's almost impossible to do it without a computer, and somebody has to understand all the finance behind it. We need someone with experience, since the regulatory requirements can be quite complicated, can be extensive. Also, in order to anticipate and to filter out any kind of edge cases, we need someone with experience to tell the skilled people how this whole thing works. We need infrastructure, databases, database clusters, a cloud, computers, software, etc. And on top of it, we need a risk engine. The risk engine is basically the software output of all the 3 points before, and it basically produces the risk analytics and produces any kind of reports. And the most important part is we have to put it all together. Everything has to be integrated, it has to be transparent, and if you're considering growing your business, it should be scalable. Those 5 points conclude the main problems fund managers, ManCos, super ManCos, etc. face nowadays in terms of risk management. And this is exactly where we come in. So at RiskSystem, we built the software solution called RiskSystem Raptor. RiskSystem Raptor is basically a one-and-all software platform where you are provided one login and you have a quick oversight of everything what is going on right below you, and maybe also in your own ManCo. RiskSystem Raptor is fully integrated, it's cloud-based, it's up to the highest cybersecurity standards. As we can see here, it's very scalable. So this, for example, is the dashboard. You get one login, you log in to RiskSystem Raptor, and the first thing you see, maybe as an experienced manager, you have oversight over all different rule sets, all different risk metrics of around 100 funds and 4 billion under management in a matter of seconds. Raptor takes in any kind of asset classes, so there are no limits. We take equities, commodities, fixed income, FX, any ETFs, CIS, funds of funds, and we also added cryptocurrencies. These data sets basically are feed into the data procedure and are all standardized, which then concludes in a very fund-specific output. So here, for example, we see very general numbers for one fund. We have the exposures, we have the NAV, sum of notionals, etc. We have a cute little bar graph about the asset classes and currency exposures. Obviously, there is way more, but just to give you a little bit of a hint what is possible. RiskSystem Raptor also takes all asset types, so there's no problem with the standard securities, derivatives, also the exotic and complicated ones. There are solutions for private equity, for real estate, and everything is implemented to the highest standard in terms of data analytics and also data visualization. As we can see here, for example, this is the EBIT Monte Carlo simulation, which is used in the private equity module in RiskSystem Raptor. Risk management and compliance. The core part of Raptor is the risk management and compliance. In order to do the risk management, especially from a compliance standpoint, RiskSystem basically separates each major fund type into separate categories and then provides overviews over all of them. For example, here, this is in particular the overview for usage. So let's imagine you are a ManCo and you have quite an amount of usage fund under your management. This would be a very easy way to quickly get an overview and see what is going on with all the funds. So we can quickly see, oh, there is a fail in the usage rules, and oh, there is a fail in the prospectus limits, which then allows the manager quickly to act and investigate. The same is possible for the liquidity side. This overview purely focuses on liquidity risk in the usage world. So any important liquidity number is basically listed, it's aggregated, and we basically break down the output into a simple pass, alert, and fail system for the fund managers to quickly interact. If the fund manager now decides to investigate, also for every fund type, any rule set and regulatory guidance is coded up into Raptor. So here we see, for example, the usage rules or a part of the usage rules, and we can quickly see, okay, the fund has no problem with specific rules. There's one rule which gets an orange alert, which means it's going to fail soon or it's very close to failing. And one rule is literally failing. So there's a fail, and that's the moment where it gets very interesting. If the manager or whoever wants to check now, why is it failing? With a click of a button, we can produce the overview. The exact position which causes the fail is marked, which basically takes away a lot of investigation time for the manager. To have a more historical overview, we provide overviews for rule sets, which is basically a mix of all rules and time series. So it's very easy to go back and see if there was anything in the past which someone might have missed. The most important part of this is that these concepts or these principles of how we aggregate the data and how we work with the data, we don't only do this for usage, which is the example right now, we do this literally for all fund types and all rule sets. Talking about historical data, maybe something to mention. On Raptor, everything is stored. So any kind of historical data, any data metrics, any report is stored in Raptor and can be easily called from the website directly. For example, here we see some graphs, but also if a fund would join us today or a ManCo would join us today, we provide a backfill service. So if the fund would provide any old data from the last X years, we can fill them up into Raptor, and the fund can see, or the manager can see, what was going on in the past. Risk reporting. Risk reporting is the next big part of our platform, where we basically we take the risk analytics from the slides before, and now we put them into the required output format. Here, for example, a very common case, the VAR backtest. This is the Raptor version of the VAR backtest. It has visuals, very easy to understand where the VAR is breaking. It has time series. It has general information about what is going on. These kind of information can be outputted as anything you want. So it can be the classical Raptor output, which would be basically on the website, but it could also be just a spreadsheet. It can be a JSON format for the more IT savvy people, or it can be a fancy HTML email. Anything is possible. For the or another example of a very common report, this is the SRRI page for usage funds. So here we see straight up the fund's NAV. Below, we see a time series of the SRI calculation. Right in the middle, there's the SRI status, so we can see if the fund is complying or not. And also, more importantly, below, there's the time series of the SRI, and it also shows you exactly how long this deviation, or if there's any deviation, is going on. So we might have to act, and Raptor would send out alerts if it's time to change the SRI number in the kit. Let's talk about a little bit about ManCos. So as I mentioned earlier, ManCos is this, I don't want to say new field, but it's this interesting field of where the ManCo not only has to make sure that services are provided to the sub-funds, but also that this actually happens smoothly. A big problem is a ManCo has to have some kind of statistics in terms of are risk reports and are procedures done in a timely manner. On Raptor, there's a statistic, or there are different tools for these kind of statistic. Here, one example is the report delivery oversight. In this case, we can easily see that this specific ManCo received in the last month around 500 reports. They were all delivered on the delivery date, so there was no delay, everything is green. Another part of ManCos are regulatory reports, which are literally for the ManCo in itself. So here we have an example of the EMIR report, which is basically looking at the sub-funds, aggregating some exposures and checking that they're not breaking any limits. In that case, everything is green, everyone is happy. Another very interesting thing on Raptor is the sanction scanner. This became a very hot topic once the Ukrainian war started, because all Western countries suddenly started to add a lot of Russian companies to their sanctions list, and that on a daily basis. What Raptor does, it automatically scans all these lists on a daily basis, runs all the ManCos funds, compares if there are any matching positions, and immediately automatically alerts the fund managers that there are potential exposures to companies on sanctions lists. As a last module, I would like to talk about the ESG module, which is, as I said, very new and very interesting. The ESG module basically consists of around 150 indicators and KPIs per position. We would look at the portfolio, run various calculations to basically judge the portfolio in an environmental, social, and governance kind of way. One of the main aggregate scores are the classic ones, which are the E, S, and G scores, which are basically calculated looking at KPIs specifically to environmental, specifically to social, and specifically to corporate governance, and then create some kind of weighting and score. A lot of calculations. The next thing, which has a high interest, is the article scanner. In ESG land, funds claim to be specific, that they are a specific article, and there we have the article scanner. We have the ESG metrics, we have business involvement, principal adverse impact, which is the first regulatory report, which actually has some kind of substance, and the carbon page. How much carbon does your portfolio produce? It's a very interesting question. Here, an example of the principal adverse impact analysis. It's compact, it's very easy to understand, and also, as before said, easy to export in any way. The article scanner, the same thing. It checks what article is required and then aggregates and checks if any positions are in that fund which disprove the claim. How does Raptor perform in the real world? So we at RiskSystem, we truly believe that with Raptor, risk management is delivered. And looking at the stats below, we can see that all the requirements for a good risk engine are fulfilled. Raptor is scalable, it is transparent, and it's definitely everything is integrated into one platform. And with this overview and these statistics, I would like to end this presentation. And I thank everyone for joining. And if there are any questions, please feel free to visit risksystem.com, write us an email, or ask questions later in the Q&A. Thank you very much.